Hi everyone, it's Joanne. Before we dive into today's episode, hit that subscribe button and give this episode a thumbs up. I first met Darren when I was searching for nature-related activities for my preschoolers. One of my earliest adventures with him was a night walk to see fireflies in Singapore. I remember vividly baby wearing my child as we ventured off the beaten track into the forest, navigating the darkness without any artificial light. Darren, with his deep knowledge of the terrain, taught us how to tune into the environment. We got to feel the ground before taking the next step, and we have to work as a team. For someone like me who grew up in urban Singapore, it was a completely new way of experiencing nature. When my children were old enough, I enrolled them in forest school, and they absolutely loved it. They made friends, learned how to start a fire, and developed a respect for nature that no typical enrichment class could provide. But as they transitioned into primary school, their time at forest school came to an end. And I've also noticed how Singapore's natural landscape has been changing. Like Darren, I'm passionate about child-led experiences, which is why I run my own filming arts program, The Dimple Loft, where we focus on nurturing creativity and imagination through storytelling. In this post-pandemic world where parks and beaches are no longer our only gathering places, I wonder, are we still connecting with nature the way we should? Are we raising children to grow up the way we want them to grow? This conversation with Darren is one I've wanted to have in a long while. So let's dive right in. Hi, Darren. Thank you for coming on the show. I really feel like we're old friends.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't hang out. For the record, we don't like sort of text each other a lot or we don't hang out for coffee. But every time I sit down and I talk to you, I feel like we have so much in common.
Yeah.
Because we both are very passionate about children's activities and early childhood and all the things that we believe are good for children. And I got to know you because I was looking for forest-led experiences. I wanted my children to be exposed to nature. And I have to say, I feel like during the time when we met, we had options. Like we still had forests that were kind of relatively untouched. By untouched, I mean like no signs, no pathways, no like proper, like barricades and all that, right? But now, now that my kids are already no longer preschoolers, I don't know where I can go to have that sort of experiences. So is that also one of the reasons why you're closing down forest school? Take us through this journey and like why have you decided to close forest school?
I mean, I think in Singapore, and I mean, I went around the world as well to visit other forest schools. I think in Singapore, we have accessibility to the forest, probably the easiest and the fastest. You can drop off at Hillview MRT and just turn the corner and straight away there's Dairy Farm Nature Park, which is crazy to think about because no other places in the world you can drop off at MRT and outside is the forest.
Right.
So we do have accessibility. But like you said, I think a lot of the forests are more manicured, more arranged and structured, and you have to kind of all your signboards and stuff.
You can't veer off the the track.
Legally. Legally. I mean, people know me, people know the stories that I mean, you read the article, you know what we do. You see the pictures, you know what we do. So legally, yeah. But I think it's not so much that there isn't so many forest places to explore. Because myself, I also experimented with doing forest school in more urban setting, as long as grass. What we like to call in some of the research conference I went to is as long as we are under the sky. And that's basically it. And we can do what we need to do. And so it's the practice and the belief. So I think it's not so much of that we close. It's more of, for me personally, I think more of about me being tired. Because 8 years worth of as you mentioned, our engagement with the authority, and then also trying to break through the walls of the resistance in terms of people's mindset in accepting this practice and these ways and what we believe in early childhood and education. So there's a lot of that work that is kind of not exactly on the ground, but it's behind the scene as well. And all this compounded together with the work of forest school and managing people, managing parents, managing children, managing safety, managing stakeholder. Yeah, those took a toll after 8 years. And I was like, okay, I think it's time to stop. Take a break from it. That's one. And I think also I saw a lot of forest schools starting up. And just now we were talking about it as well, like the forest preschool or the CE. Eaton House also tried to insert something in. Almost every single international school in Singapore is currently having it as well. And many preschool also trying to adopt it. Many individual, many community, and even I wouldn't say they're forest school, but even like PA, CCs now have nature khakis, which is great. I see the programs and all that. So I see that whole movement going on in the community already. So I thought, I mean, we've done our part and our main goal was to be obsolete. So I see that since the community and the ecosystem has grown, then we are obsolete.
What do you mean your main goal is to be obsolete?
I'm a believer that in trying to change things, we shouldn't possess it, right? So when we, let's say for example, for a school, the goal was to have more people, practice it, doing it, and when it becomes so rampant, it becomes a cultural thing, then those so-called service provider will be obsolete naturally lah. But that's great for the children. So that's our goal lah. So our goal is to have more children experience it, and for more children to experience it, we need to really
build that awareness and network to
and
support.
people need to try to do it lah. So
right.
After 8 years, I see wow, it's really a thing now. I mean, it's kind of getting into mainstream. Even NTUC has it, Outdoor School Singapore. And our last final step is MOE, which they know themselves. I spoke to them before. We have conversations. And so they know about it and they themselves are trying to develop stuff within their own context lah. So when MOE pick up, it's like, yeah, game over.
I see. Okay. I mean, I suppose for context and some parents who might be listening in, we have to give them a little bit of an introduction to what forest school is. What does it actually mean so that we are all on the same page about what we should know about forest school?
So for people who, new to the concept, I would say forest school is a practice, it's a way of life, pedagogy, as people call it. But the way we practice it is there's a lot of child lab, meaning the children, we don't have so much structure around it. So if people were to go to Google it now and see the whole range of forest school in Singapore, there's variation. Yeah, but the general focus we understand and believe in is that we empower the child, we believe in the child, we trust the child to be able to develop their own interests based on their own motivation. That's one. And then the other part is we rely heavily on the environment as the main teacher. So we are, as adults, we are kind of like guides, facilitators, but we're not teaching them things. We do share with them, but we don't necessarily, everybody get over and then I'm going to teach you ABC. It's like, there's a spider, some interested, we can share, some not interested, they're out there rolling in the mud or something. So it's that orientation. So by and large, that's kind of forest school that we practice.
You know, the thing about forest school is, I talk about my experience in the forest with the fireflies and all that. There's always this sense of danger that comes with what you just shared about what forest school could be. I mean, spiders and then rolling in the mud. Like, what if, they get hurt or they fall or they slip on a rock and hit their head? And, there's all this fear, right? That comes from the unknown and being in an environment that obviously many of us did not grow up in. If you talk to our parents, they just go to the river, they, climb trees and all that. But here, because we never had that exposure, the concept of forest school can be quite intimidating and scary for parents, especially when we're so precious about our kids and we don't want them to get hurt.
I mean, I think I like that question and the subject because I've been sharing a lot of people. I think there's a difference between fear and danger. And often parents are reacting based on fear. And interestingly, they don't respond to danger properly. So I give you an example. So very, very often parents don't realize car park is a huge danger. Like the moving cars in the car park. And everybody kind of let their guards down around car parks. Whereas in the forest, they get very jumpy when they see all the rocks and slides. But the interesting thing is kids, when they are in the forest, they are actually very aware, and they will actually not be so like brash about going there and then jump off. It doesn't work that way. They build upon that confidence when they're in that environment. Whereas in a car park setting or urban setting, very often urban setting, a lot of the dangers are not identified or are forgotten, and carelessly people let it happen. And so the funny thing is in forest school, as practitioner, we get more aware and more kind of anxious in urban setting than in the forest. Because urban setting, we know people drop their guards down.
Right.
So the interesting thing is because it's between fear and danger. And so how I define it is fear is a lot of time what people imagine, but danger is more of there is real avenue. So for example, if something is protruding out of the ground, a particular metal rod, that thing is a danger. That thing has to be addressed. But is the playing dangerous? No, the play is not dangerous. That thing is dangerous. So the playing around the thing will cause parents or practitioner to imagine, and therefore the fear of what's possible. So I suggest people then remove that metal rod. Then your
Mm,
danger is removed. Then you don't have the fear already. Yeah.
mm,
So I often think it's really defining and differentiating these two aspects that will help parents and practitioner as well.
What are the
Mm.
core principles that differentiate forest schools from all the other traditional education methods?
I think principally forest school, in its especially the outdoor element is very strong in terms of interacting with the environment, allowing the environment to be the main teacher.
Mm,
So that subscription to the idea that the environment acts on us, and the strong belief that environment acts on us as much as we affect the environment. That is one of the core principles that is slightly different, because I think in most other education pedagogy, the focus is very heavy on the child,
mm,
the individuals taking on the responsibility. But for forest school practices, the deeper ones, the environment play a huge role, and we are also the environment. So we see ourselves less of as an individual possessing and controlling, but more as an individual as the environment.
mm. Does this method of practicing,
Mm,
because we don't teach, right? You're
mm.
saying that. So does this method of practicing forest school education differs from the different countries
Oh,
that
very
you've
much.
observed? I would love to hear you share, like, what are the observations that you've made across all your, interactions with the different countries and
Mm.
practitioners around the world?
I think very interesting because I get to travel and visit other forest school, and I get to visit local forest school, different forest school as well. I'll go and observe the session, talk to the practitioner. Every forest school is different, and it depends on the practitioner's own personality, their culture, their background, their belief system. So if you go to, let's say, for in Singapore setting, just in Singapore only, so we have Forest School Singapore example, Forest School Singapore, 100 Path, Nature Explorer, Forest Adventure, and every one of us, based on the leaders and the community that is there, um, they are all very different in the way we practice this forest school. Yeah. Even though the core principles are similar, but because our personality different. So when we go overseas, wow, even wider range of differences. So for example, I went to Japan, and Japan has, that their younger kids were actually like 4 years old, they will let the kids go out and buy fish and all that kind of stuff. I mean, people see those video TV shows will know. And it's true that level of independence. So in their own practice, they also would actually allow that as part of their experience for a school. So example, I know of this forest school in Marun Tabo, I think. There's a video on it on YouTube. Their graduation is the kids themselves will go to the forest, and the coaches or practitioner would have placed some graduation item in the forest, and they go by themselves without adult supervision into the forest to find that item, a forest that they are familiar with, to find that item and actually bring it back and then graduate by themselves. I don't know, Singapore again. The adult
Wow.
supervision won't happen. So that's Japan. And then Italy, because the Italians are more willing to come out and have like arguments and discussions. So that level of openness is different as compared with Singapore setting, with more conservative or Asian settings. So their forest school has the element of the availability to let them negotiate and argue and fight is even more
What do you mean? Like the
prevalent.
kids argue with the coaches or what?
Within themselves, the conflicts, basically. Like in more Asian setting, conflicts are our threshold for conflicts. Even in forest school Singapore, our threshold for conflicts is already very high. But then when I see the Italians, like even higher level of
Can you
threshold.
give me an example? I mean, for people to also understand what it means by conflict, or what is an example of a conflict that can happen under the whole forest education setting?
So like in a forest school session setting, when the kids were to play and all that, and let's say there's a stake that there's 2 or 3 people wants, and then they fight over the stakes, and then they start arguing. Outside of forest school setting, a typical education or at home setting, the adults will come in, and then we were like, yeah, let your sister have it lah,
Yeah.
or let your brother have it lah, or share
Take
lah.
turns
Yeah.
and all.
So we'll give them a lot of these things, which they also learn along the way lah. But in a forest school setting, we let them kind of
Fight it out.
figure out what kind of negotiation or what kind of strategy applies. They may end up taking turns, but it's through their own realization,
Right.
which we find more effective over the long run for them, because then they realize what strategy works for them. Yeah. So
When you talk about the Italians, like, what do you mean? Like, is it just more vigorous, or like just
more expressive, I think. I think the word I'll use, more expressive in terms of their opinions,
right?
what they feel about. And I mean, they allow for, I mean, as Italy, I go on the streets, people are allowed to protest, Singapore cannot, right?
Right, yeah.
And some Asian countries also cannot.
I think when we talk about, I mean, I really agree with you on letting the children sort of fight it out, so to speak. But does anyone ever get hurt during a confrontation or a conflict situation in forest school?
No, yes, very much.
Oh, this is not what parents want to hear.
I don't know, it's like, example, like a scratch here, a scratch. Those I think are still manageable.
Right.
So for me lah, this personally me. Okay, so many people have asked me, how do you deal with this conflict?
Yeah.
And if it escalate, at what point do you draw that line, right? So for me, my line is drawn when somebody picks up an item to try to in that conflict and try to negotiate conflict with an item, then I'll try to remove it. If they are using their hands, usually kids usually won't escalate too far. Then the other point I look out for is actually when children's the eyes turn. So like when human beings if they lost it in their head, their eyes will be very different. They look very different, and so those are the moments I look out for And usually there are indicators before that, meaning there's something building up. It's repression. The conflict is not the main issue. The conflict just trigger and reveal the issue. There is something building up in the child or that person. So yeah, we do have some altercation and some scratches, bruises. And most of our parents are quite reasonable, and when we share with them, they do understand what we're doing, and we allow them. And so there is conversation. There's this opportunity to learn about how is it something that the kids want to do, these fights and physically fighting so hard, or is there other ways, maybe just shouting, yelling. So the children learn through that process what actually works. So I tell a lot of parents, if at a young age they don't experience it, when they are older, then they will think of using this as an option, which I think at that age, if they use that option when they're older without knowing the consequence, that's where things goes very wrong.
Can children work things out in a non-forest setting?
Yes, I believe so. I know of friends who came to observe forest school already. They brought it back to their own setting, whether is it yoga for children, robotics, or parkour, whatever program they do. They exercise the same belief and practice in that setting. So it's a mindset thing regarding this conflict.
So then what is so unique about forest school then, or the benefits that maybe only you can get from forest school and nowhere else?
So this is the thing, which is also why I close as well, right? Because as I also am learning as I evolve my own forest school practice, I start to realize how that practice can happen in so many different settings. And so I don't think it's unique to itself. Like forest on you can only have the experience in forest school. I don't think it's true. I think you can have forest school in many, many different settings, even in the urban setting, even in production, even in films, even in is a mindset of how we do things. So if I were to anchor it on one point, is what my sensei used to share with me, which is the whole point of forest school practice is we help bring people to a space between the earth and the stars. And as long as that is the work and intention, then you are at that practice already. So for us, it's the easier place to do it. But once we learn how to do it, we can do it in any setting. And that's the next level lah.
I want to share my own experience as a parent who has sent the children to forest school. And I have to say that it takes a lot of self-discipline to shut up and not react. Because when you're in an unfamiliar environment, you will see your child fearlessly walk through tall grass, grass that is as tall as your child. And as a parent, you go like, okay, what if there's snakes? What if there's a hole? What if there's centipede? What if there's, like a million and one things are there? But the child just crawls right into this. They see like a little hedge, like with a opening. They'll just crawl in. To them it's an adventure, and it takes really a lot of self-restraint on my part to just not react. And I think this is something very unique to forest school. That sense of exploration and that fearlessness of the environment that I think can only come with being in a setting like that, because it's so, it's very, the forest, or rather nature, is just stable. I feel in that sense, like it's solid in that sense, right? It's not like human factors where you don't really know what this person is going to do next. But nature is sort of just there. And so I feel like the unique thing about the forest is that it provides this stability. Of course, we can talk about unpredictable weather and all that, but there's this sense of stability in the space, in the ground, and that sense of, if you trample your feet loud and then all the other creatures know that you're there, they are not gonna attack you for nothing. Like people, like the animals or the whatever is out there, they don't attack you for nothing. Usually they are also afraid, or they are provoked, or So there's this almost predictability to that. But humans, not like that, right? Like you some people just attack not because they are provoked, but just because you don't know what's going on. And so people always veer towards nature, animals, when they are looking for that sense of stability. So I think there's something very unique about forest school that is very beneficial for all of us, that cannot be replaced by anything else.
I like what you share, because I think as you shared, it reminds me of that two words, as you share, as two words that really symbolizes that uniqueness that you were sharing, was time and space. So I think forest school allow for people to be at that time and space moments, instead of trying to live, in the past or the future. And I think that time and space, almost like, we like to call it, like, sometimes doing forest school session at time, like time and space, we contort or almost manipulate time and space in that setting, in the play and the freedom and everything. Sometimes time almost stands still, the space almost expands in ways that is not just realistically looking at things. So it's very spiritual in that sense as well. I think what you're sharing at the time was the connection with yourself and the place and the time and the environment, that uniqueness. I agree which is why the forest is the easier place to find connection than a more urban setting.
And the fact that you got to find your own answers there. There's no Google. There's no adult also to give you an answer. To put this in perspective, I was filming in Canberra, I think right after COVID, and when things started opening up. And, Canberra is not exactly a destination that everybody would want to go to at the first drop of, long leave, right? There's not much going on there, at least that's the perception. But there's a lot of, open spaces and nature. So while I was sort of waiting in between there, because there was a wedding going on downstairs, we were upstairs filming in the cafe, there was a wedding going on downstairs, and so with the noise, we can't continue. We had to wait. And then I saw some children, there were very, very big trees around. I saw some children just veering off the party, of course, with a parent there. And they were climbing a tree. And I said that, and I just was so moved, because, there's no playground, there's no need to, like, children are not running around, like, in restaurants sometimes when they're done eating or they're bored with what the adults are doing, they start running around, they start playing video games.
Yeah.
But over there, they just go to the tree and they were climbing. And just watching these two kids navigate that tree. One of them got up, the other one was struggling, couldn't get up, took off the socks, tried with the socks, without the socks, and then, the other friend is up there, tried to help, reach down, this, come down, push up. So all that negotiation that was going on between these two children, figuring out how to climb up that tree was amazing to me, because you got to use your brain.
Yeah.
And you also got to test, your own weight. You got to sort of find your grip. You got to kind of figure out. And this is so precious to me when I watched it. I was just like, wow, this is such a precious experience that so many of our Singaporean kids will never be able to experience, right? And if you think about it, where else can you do that? I mean, you took us on a walk in the dark, and naturally the fear of, like, what if there are snakes? What if there's this? What if there's a hole, right? I mean, you were very familiar with the environment. Many of us weren't. And I had faith in you, obviously. So what you said about just, you have to use your senses. So it's not just, okay, give me a guidebook now, walk this path, walk this way. Watch out for falling rocks. Watch out. Nobody is there telling you this. Just like in life, I think. Like, nobody is there to tell us, hey, look out for whatever there is to look out for. You kind of have to tune your own senses. You got to feel the ground. You got to go with a little bit of your instincts. And if you get bitten, you learn. You sort of, it's part of the experience, right? Just like in life. So I really, I can't rave about this experience enough, the whole forest experience. But the only thing that I lament is the structured nature environments that we have in Singapore. And I know you have a lot probably to tell us about that, because it's your struggle too, isn't it? Finding places to be able to do that. I mean, we don't talk about you closing your school, but when during this, this whole journey, 8 years, you must have also struggled to find places to conduct. Maybe tell us a little bit about the exchanges you might have had.
Yes. So I like the story you share about the tree, the two kids, because then I was writing on that. I can share, everybody can hear this and know. In Singapore, legally, once more, not allowed to climb any trees in Singapore. They are all protected. They are all, because people are scared of a lot of things. So there's only apparently 4 trees in Singapore that you can climb. 4 trees.
Okay.
And then I know one of them is in Jacob Palace. That's for the children. Jacob Palace
that one
Garden.
I know.
Yeah. Then the other 3 trees, I think they are for the end parks or contractors or people who needs to do tree trimming. They do training on the 3 trees to climb. Outside of that, legally not allowed. Unless you have your own tree in your own garden, then okay lah. Nobody will stop you lah. If not publicly, not allowed lah. So that is just a glimpse of the structural challenges that I have to face lah.
So what happens if I'm a random, and now that we know this, we cannot unknow this, but what if I'm just a random parent who just saw a nice tree and I just got my kids to climb?
I think it's
like, will I get fined or something?
Unlikely, because it's not a big issue. It's just if you're in an area that is like conserve and reserves area, maybe they will come and like tell you
nicely
something. Yeah. And that's about it lah. That's all you get lah. And you do it again, they tell you the same thing again lah. More or less that lah. There's no like,
they're gonna stomp me. Joanne Peh.
Maybe you get some highlight.
Climb the trees when she knows it's not allowed to. But the benefits of tree climbing. Okay, anyway, let's continue with your train of thought.
So I think in what I learned over the years is there's nature park, there's nature reserves, there's parks. So a different category of places, and the level of intensity that is rules are enforced there in terms different as well. The intention is always good. I mean, when I work with these people in authorities, largely and parks lah. So the intention is usually to protect the space, protect the environment. But I feel they can do better in their communication engagement for sure. That maybe we can help them do some training, a PD training. But I think when it comes, because like for ourselves, we used to have a tree that we climb at Dairy Farm, and it don't belong to NParks, it belong to an uncle backyard. And when we saw the tree was having like not well lah, the ground was a bit more barren because of our presence. We do recognize our impact on the place. we actually stopped going to the place, and what we did was we actually barricaded the place. Very typical like NParks doing it. But the communication we put there on the tree around the barricade was let the tree rest. It was not no climbing because whatever lah, or no climbing, no, everything no. But it was like let the tree rest. Interestingly, the public all respond very positively to that experience because the tree is out there at the uncle's backyard. But a lot of people who walk by, they actually respected that based on those messages, which I find very refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
And we so time to time we experiment with this kind because we are out there in the public, we have to engage lah. So with public and all that. So our way of engaging evolve and change as well lah. So but the structural aspect of NPark and all that is real lah. There's a lot of this one cannot do, that one cannot do, and I've over the past 8 years faced so much. I even have legal letters and lawyer letters from them, and I've paid fines before. Not I go for international conference. I share with my international friends. They're all they're
Very
all laugh.
amused.
Yeah, you pay fine to do your work. We all don't have to pay fine. But interestingly, every country also have their own rules and also things to handle and negotiate. That's just generally what it is. Unless you are in like maybe Denmark, Sweden, or New Zealand, where outdoor they have this rule where outdoor is allowed for the whole public goods. If not, Singapore's management of the outdoors, yeah, you have all these issues lah. If you're not in NParks area, you end up in either town council area or SLA or whoever places are, and everybody have their own rules of.
Right.
So you have to negotiate it.
So the thing is, why can't we just have like a real like rustic, I mean, I know the Singapore Armed Forces, they train in like the real like rustic forest, right? But then we don't have like a real rustic forest that we can experience what nature is like.
Well,
everything after a while, it used to be a nice sort of, wild place. And then, signs will start coming up, pathways will be built, little shelters and gazebos will be there. And of course, all the information about the eco life that's in this area, which I highly suspect would have all run away because of all the noise and people coming, to that space. So why can't we just have a wild place to explore freely?
So interestingly, in Singapore setting, any place that is left kind of wild and without like infrastructures, like toilets, like
car
parks and huts and all that. So when they don't have those infrastructure, what happens is the space is the ownership is not very clear in that sense. And when the agencies and organization comes to the table to decide who gonna kind of use the land or own the land or develop the land, etc., what happens is the one who can make more money out of that space will tend to get it lah. But if, like you say, if there's somebody who chop it right with those infrastructure, then the discussion is different and more difficult for development to happen lah. So then conservation is easier to happen in that space. So like a space that I used to do for a school in Rifle Range Nature Park. So the original plan for the space last time was supposed to be a condominium, and luckily the whole discussion and parks managed to get the protection of the space, and so they went to install the car parks and things and redevelop the space lah. More formally chop the space.
Thank you for tuning in. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, we'll be so grateful if you could drop a like on YouTube and give us 5 stars on Spotify. It really does make a difference. Let's get back into the episode. I think communication is something that we can all improve on. And speaking of communication, I think one of the episodes that I want to talk to you about is this big rant. Well, I don't know if that doesn't sound very positive, but I give it to you because I think you're very passionate. Obviously, people look at it as like, why are you so angry? Why are you this and that? But obviously you're passionate about something, and you are, the fact that you bother to speak up about it goes to show how much you care about it. So I want to bring all of us back to the time when CCTVs had to be installed in preschools. And actually, I was quite shocked when I saw your post. It's like 5-6 minutes long, I think. Was it 6 minutes?
10.
10 minutes, Well, you just like... and I was like, wow, like, you, like, you made me think about it, because if I were to be honest with you, when the news came out that CCTVs had to be installed in preschools because of an incident of an abuse, I mean, I never like gave it much thought anyway, because my kids were already kind of graduating from there. I just sort of, okay, like that's just how it is, right? But you provided a perspective that maybe some people might not agree with, but it was still a different perspective that I really want to talk about with you. So tell us a little bit about that 10-minute rant that you went on.
So, I mean, we all know, I mean, everybody can Google it. The CCTV camera installation in preschool was announced last year, right? I was very pissed because I realized what the hell is putting a camera pointing at people to manage and control them. Then you're not gonna get, okay, basically the behavior is gonna be fake one generally as a whole. You're not gonna get real interaction, authenticity, sincerity, relationship. You're gonna get everybody fearful and trying to control, trying to avoid. And the the best part is I realized as I was, and I shared it in the video as well, was that if we all know growing up, we all been in school, we both experienced, and all know ourselves or somebody who experienced bullying, the best place to bully people, or not say best place, but the most prominent place to bully people is the freaking toilet. It's always the toilet. Put a CCTV camera there. Nobody puts a CCTV camera at the toilet. But that's the place that all so-called bad things happen all the time. You put a CCTV camera, everything just goes into the toilet. You used to go and station the toilet, is it? So it just don't make logical sense. And at some point, what I realized was the whole installation thing was not for the welfare of our children. It is, if it's for the welfare of our children, we would have done it differently. We would have engaged a different way of taking care of the staff, taking care of people, proper recruitment, collectively as parents, teachers, school, different stakeholders. There will be this kind of work and effort if we really care about our children. But when you just put a CCTV camera, that for me, it means I just want to cover my backside. All of us just want to cover our backside. Whether it's the ACDA, whether it's the preschool, whether it's parent, everybody just want to cover backside. And like, then you're not, it's not for the children. Don't say it's for the children. Say as it is, it's for covering backside.
Wow. Wow, okay. I mean, I like how candid and how just real and authentic you are. I don't know if that's going to get you into trouble. That's the last thing I hope that will happen.
I already put a video 10 minutes out already.
I mean, I do agree the point about how we have to engage in a conversation, right? We have to look at what the real problem is, But then at the same time, don't you think that putting the CCTVs in the preschools is more to address parents? It's not so much for the kids, is it? It's really, this move is to sort of assure parents that, well, there's some sort of surveillance. So and there's some sort of accountability should anything happen, right?
But if you think about this, I mean, recently still got cases going on, other abuses in preschool. And I'm very, very sure whatever we read on news, there are like 10 times more that is going on, by the way.
Again, wow, this is again so real, but okay.
It's 10 times more that is going on, and it's just not identified or not reported. I used to work in the preschool as well, and my wife also is a preschool teacher. So the things we know about in schools, and I believe whoever watching this, a preschool teacher will agree with me. They've seen a lot more things that's going on that we don't agree as well. But the way to solve it is, and parents are actually very helpful in terms of being a checker for that process. But we need to work together, not judge each other for the process. It's work together to check each other. Like even in for a school setting, sometimes some parents will feedback certain things. And I think it's valuable when they are actively participating, they're looking out for each other. We all have our blind side. But as long our intention is for the child, I think we're okay to work together. But when our intention is to cover backside, as I say, then it's a problem. Like having parents pressuring the school to do well I think it's okay. But how they pressure is another thing. Like the communication, as you mentioned, the conversation need to be done better in this modern era. But not CCTV camera.
I felt like what you were trying to get at with that was that, I might be wrong, but it isn't just that she cannot have CCTV. It's more like there should have been a conversation about it rather than just take the easy way out and say, okay, let's just install CCTVs. I mean, I don't know whether that was just my guess from watching the video and speaking with you and knowing who you are. Because I mean, ultimately, 就是山高皇帝远嘛, you know, ultimately there's so many schools, there's so many teachers, and so many possible things can happen. And it does seem like a way to solve or address the concern with the CCTVs. But then with that being implemented, does that mean that, okay, now we no longer need to have the conversation? We no longer need to address the real problem, which is, you know, are our early childhood staff overworked, right? And what is the real issue here? Like they are overworked, they are not qualified, or what is it? Is sufficient care given to them? There is a real problem of hiring, I think, educators in the early childhood sector, and it could also be because of the system, right? The ecosystem. And I think I've also spoken with some people in positions where they understand this struggle, they understand this difficulty of hiring, and they want to elevate the status of preschool teachers as well. But it's just not something that can happen overnight.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but the thing is, nobody is hearing this conversation. Nobody is aware, and nobody knows what really is going on. And I think that is the thing that we sometimes struggle with, like as I suppose as parents who care about kids, or as educators who are practicing, you know, child-led experiences and all that we wish that we had clarity, that there was this communication. And so maybe all of us can help. It's not just very dependent on that one, you know, authoritative figure to provide the solutions, but maybe together we can figure something out. You know, we can have that, you know, whether it's just real actionable things that we can do, or just mental moral support that we can give to each other, which is why I really like what you did with all of us. You pulled us all into a group, and then, you know, with the intention of wanting to support, you know, each other and all that. I mean, I really appreciate that. And I feel that with you wanting to sort of take a different role now, things are a little bit not quite the same.
I think naturally.
Yeah.
Because I see myself now in the role of more as kind of like a researcher, advocate, writer. Because I've seen, I mean, Dimple Love, what you do. I've seen many other practitioners and what they do. And I love what so many people do. Amazing things. They put their heart into it. They're passionate about it. But I realize there's a lack of kind of proper documentation. And very often as a practitioner ourselves, it's very difficult to document ourselves. It's very like, I feel like very narcissistic almost at some point to document yourself. But then I realized, but now I'm interested to document for other people, and why not I just do that work? And similarly, it could bring people together, maybe can bring more conversation, can bring more eyeball to the work that is being done around by many people. Who has amazing work they've done. So I think that is the area that I'm drifting towards now. And I hope to be able to, you know, bring up those issues and things. And I believe in talking about it. And I believe we don't always have to have solutions. I think people in Singaporean mindset are result-oriented KPI. So, but I've learned through working with the kids in forest school, very often it's not about getting to solution. Sometimes it's about just being there, talking, sharing, listening. Then solution may happen after a while by itself even. But listening, talking, sharing, I think is an important component.
It's like the fruit needs time to turn ripe. You can't hurry it. And if this flower just doesn't bear fruit, it doesn't bear fruit. Not all flowers are going to bear fruit. Not every problem is going to have a solution. And just because it doesn't have a solution now doesn't mean it will never, ever have a solution. Maybe with the right nurture and care given to this plant, it might have a different result. So I think this is what I find so valuable about forest school. So what are some of the tips that you can give parents, you know, give to us parents, given that we are constantly, or most of us are in an urban setting, and now that, you know, you are closing your school and maybe like for me, my kids are also a little bit more grown up now. Like what options do we have? What sort of after-school activities should we really be thinking about for our kids?
I think firstly ask the kids themselves. That's what I always believe. Ask the kids themselves what they want to try. Go and explore and try it.
They're going to tell you, I want to play video games.
Hey, video games, you got to put them to a program that intensely run. Because I got a friend who's a pioneer in esports. The amount of work to do is high. Put them through that, maybe they don't want to play already.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What is this?
I mean, like if you heard of this school called Sudbury School.
No.
So Sudbury School, or in UK they call it Summerhill. The concept of the school is they let the kids do whatever they want, which video games comes in as well, right?
Right.
But the interesting thing is how they facilitate that interest and experience. It's not like, oh, no screen time straight away. But it's how they facilitate what is the interest, why the interest, what part of the video game do you like, and then go into that whole development. So I feel if I were to advise parents something is when our children have an interest, it's important to facilitate that interest and then develop upon it. And because I think at the end of the day, the kids, if they were to see us being involved with them in their interests, that's a totally different thing from just screen time. Watching TV, watching a show that you both enjoy together is different from just staring at it or scrolling your thing by yourself. Even scrolling together is a different experience from by themselves, just like that.
They
like that.
scroll theirs, you scroll yours. That's
it's different, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you see a thing, you talk about it, right? And so that's what we like to call social dramatic play is involved in this experience. So I think following the interest of a child is still very important. And as long as we run along that line, and of course bringing them outdoors. And outdoors, I would suggest to parents is very simple. It's not asking people to all go into the forest and chong sua. No need. Once in a while you want to go ahead. But I think stepping after dinner, going outside, walking and all that, those are simple things that can be done. And it's healthy as well. And not just for the kids, it's for the adults also. The adults need that walk. Very often all of us with our work, we need that walk.
I agree with you. We are almost at the end, but I realized I forgot to mention to
Right.
ask you about special needs. Because you've also worked with children with special needs in your forest school education as well. Like, how beneficial is forest school education for children with special needs?
So I think forest school, because of this child-led, no structure, no curriculum per se, I think special need kids fit in absolutely perfectly because of that they get to be themselves and they get to do according to what they need to do and what they feel like they need to do. Whereas in a school setting, for special need kids, a lot of them, specifically for me, I work a lot with autistic kids. So a lot of them is a huge struggle to even keep with the order of things and in a four-wall setting, so much sensory things and triggering everything. Whereas in the outdoor setting, you can shout, you want to shout, you scream, but it's fine, It's more accepting and embracing, inclusive, truly inclusive space, nature. And so and interestingly, when I travel around the world, almost all practitioners internationally all shared, yes, we have a lot of special needs kids in forest school, generally across the globe, because where a lot of the school or education cannot accept them. Usually, often forest school can accept because of what we do and how we do it. The only thing that is challenging, I think, for accepting special needs kids is that if they are, we call them the runners. So there's this term that we use if working with special needs kids, some people know some of them will dart and run away. And if they are too big and physically too strong, then that's a
danger because when they run, then how are you gonna?
And we actually had a case before. We tried this kid and it didn't work because he was just too old. We really wanted to try, but we needed somebody who's not just a normal person can take. It's like you need to be physically fit to keep up with him. So we needed so many layers. We told the parents we couldn't do it. But if not, generally, across the 8 years, we have never rejected anyone who has any special need or even disabilities. Fine. I mean, we have kids who come with hearing impairment as well. It's fine as well. You figure out it's once more all about figuring out life, and so the space is there to figure out. So everybody figure out together.
Do they get a special curriculum or do they mix all
No,
together?
we just so that's why we don't specifically tell people in forest school that we do for special need kids. We will do for special need kids. We don't say because just come. Anybody, anything is fine. We work it out along the way together. And if something really cannot, as we work it out, then we will flag it up to the parents and talk about it.
I mean, now that we've almost come to the end, what is the future then for our school?
I think it will be, I hope that it will be obsolete in future, because it will become part of our culture as a human race. Even I won't just say Singapore, I think it's the human race. It will be part of our culture to pay attention, appreciate, and connect with the environment.
What is your ideal vision of Singapore's education?
Ideal vision. Right now, if you ask me that question, I would say I don't think the education is that bad. I think we have decent education in Singapore. But ideally, I would hope that we have variety, meaning there's more range of, that means not so much standardization of schools. Every schools can choose how they want to run their school.
I think they do, actually.
The principal, nowadays the principal has the main kind of control over the schools. But they still have to follow very strictly to the curriculum and things, right? I think for a few years in Singapore MOE, they actually allow for more. I think that time they have those autonomous school, that whole era lah. They have a bit of that, but now they rein in back a lot of the control lah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, that's why I understand lah. And I think like last time SOTA sports school.
Yes.
Wow, a lot of this suddenly. So that variety was fantastic. I love it. But I think now they're reining it back a bit from that.
I mean, I do think that from at least from my conversation with the minister program, I learned a little bit about the education, and I realized that for secondary schools, a lot of them have their own specialty CCAs that hopefully in that sense attract different people coming because of interest rather than because of the ranking of the school. I don't know what the current KPI of each school is, but sometimes I think it's a matter of changing that KPI, right? If your KPI is about something else, then the entire school will be working towards something else. They'll have a different plan. Because from what I understand, schools do have that autonomy to sort of decide how they want to do and how they want to, even how early they want to start their day, for example. Also, actually, parents do play a role. Apparently, because again, the numbers, right? If majority of the parents come together, they have a strong network and they are pushing for certain things, then it is also likely that there is that partnership as well. I do think that our education is not that bad. It's just that perhaps a lot of us, we don't have the courage to stand up and say, hey, why don't we try something different? We don't have the right questions to ask as well. We maybe are not so well versed in communication. Like we would say no climbing instead of the tree needs to rest, which obviously sounds more reasonable. Because no climbing, why? No reason, just no climbing, So again, I think because we can hone these skills a little bit better, then perhaps our education system can also, take on a different tone from what we are so familiar with now. At least that's my take.
That's why I think I don't think that education is that bad, but I think it can have more variety to allow more kids to be able to, like you said, the different school and the different niche. I think that's fantastic.
Okay, thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation. I mean, cheers to you, even though, that's, Forest School is closing its chapter. I do think that you will open up a new chapter to something else that's more exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so before you go, I've got a little gift for you.
Okay.
So here's a gift from me to you. I usually present my guests with some gift, with a gift.
Okay.
And 是我的心意啦. It represents what I hope to bring to you.
可以开吗？
可以. Which is...
Ta-da! The tea flask.
Yes, it's a flask that you can keep hot water.
Oh.
The reason why I give this is 其实是送温暖.
谢谢你.
It's my way of giving
So
you
cute.
warmth. I mean, I can't give you those warming packs because you probably won't use it. It's like Singapore's too hot. But sometimes, 养生嘛. We need to drink some, hot tea, hot water. Yeah, so
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is my little gift for you.
Oh, it's very nice.
For spreading warmth also, bringing joy to the kids and for doing what you do with all of us in the community.
Thank you.
So thank you so much,
Thank
Darren.
you so much.
Bye-bye. As we wrap up this conversation, I find myself reflecting on the deep connection between nature and the way we nurture our children. Nature offers profound lessons that transcend the confines of classrooms and traditional learning. In our increasingly urbanized and tech-driven world, it's easy to forget the simplicity and importance of letting children explore, take risks, and develop a sense of wonder. Though forest school may be closing, perhaps it's a moment for us to rethink how we engage with nature and foster independence in our children. Lessons that go beyond academic metrics. There may not be picture-perfect moments for social media when it comes to authentic nature experiences, but the insights and growth gained from these moments far outweigh the snapshots we're used to capturing. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, so be sure to like this episode and subscribe to the channel as well. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you in the next episode of What Do I Know with me, Joanne Peh.